Welcome to the Freedom and Prosperity Podcast with your host, Desi Arnaz. Join us as we explore the journeys of top achievers who share strategies and stories about their success and living life on their own terms. Get ready to be inspired.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Desi Arnaz and welcome back to the Freedom and Prosperity Podcast. I'm excited today because today I have an amazing guest. I love his story and I think you guys are going to love it too. His name is Chris Springer and he's here in San Diego, actually, where I am, which is kind of cool. Maybe we'll get a chance to catch some lunch here very shortly or, connect in some way. But Chris Springer is the founder of a program that is called the House of Music. And I'll let him tell you what it's all about, but I think you're going to be very impressed. So Chris, welcome to the Freedom and Prosperity Podcast. And I really appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Desi, for having me on. I'm loving the name, Desi Arnaz. It goes back to some of my roots, what I was just experiencing last week. Yes, my name is Chris Springer, born and raised in San Diego, and it's just really an honor to be here.
It's an honor for me to have you here, especially because I know your story and I know your heart. And I think people, before this interview is over, will understand your heart. So before we got started here today, you're kind of telling me a little bit about your background. And I think that if you wouldn't mind sharing that with some of our viewers today, I think that they'll get a lot from that. Would you take a couple minutes and just tell us a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are today, where you're talking about doing what you do, which I don't want to tip your hand, so I'll let you explain what you do, okay?
Yeah, I always, when I introduce myself and people look at me, I'm very light complected and my name is Springer. And I always say, I'm Chris Springer and I am Latino.
Okay.
I am proud of my heritage. My family is from Logan Heights, a barrio in San Diego that was historical, if you may say. And my family has a very historical background in this area, part of town. My father, I am second generation American, and my father was one of the first presidents of the Chicano Federation in the 60s and 70s. And he marched with Cesar Chavez, which is Cesar Chavez Day is on Monday, which is kind of another holiday. Yeah. And he was, my father was fighting for the Chicano, as they were said back in the day, Chicano, the movement that was happening in the 60s. There was a lot of movements that were happening then. I was born in 62, but my background is Latin, and coming from these areas, I've seen a lot in our days, and coming from these type of areas as yourself, I know a little bit about your background. It's kind of mold us into what we are today. I look at it as having like two educations, that street, but also that, college education. I went to college late in life. Yeah. And after going through my little part of life where I wasn't doing so good and doing some bad things in life, and if it wasn't for the Lord turning me towards this, I believe that's where I'm kind of at today. But what happened was I went back to school late in life, college, and I won a scholarship. But radio station KSDS Jazz 80.3 FM said, hey, you can go finish your scholarship or you can have a job. And I said, I'll take the job as a radio host, which I took that in the year 1999, 2000. Everybody was kind of like, oh, the millennium, what's going to happen? Is the world going to end? And I was like, what? Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for this because music has always been a big part of my life. And I went on to playing jazz for a couple of years. And then they were like, can you create a Latin-based show? Because Latin music has a huge impact on jazz. Not this style of Latin music. This is Afro-Caribbean music from Cuba and Puerto Rico. And music, and Africa has a major influence of this music too. So they said, well, can you create something? And I said, yeah, I would love to. So I created learning the history of this music in mambo and from the 40s and the 50s. And that's where Desi Arnaz comes in because, you got to look at it like, it was kind of mind-boggling that you had a Cuban band leader with a big television show that was really famous. And during that time, when you look at the history of the music that I play, this was originated from Cuba. So when they migrated from Cuba in the late 1920s and 30s, they joined the Cotton Club and Harlem, and they migrated there, and they knew jazz because they're classically trained, these artists. They came here. So they said, you know what? It was a guy named Mario Bausa that said, I am going to create something here, a movement in America. This music was created in New York City.
Oh,
So you have Africa is a major influence in everything about life. So the drums from Africa, the Latin rhythms of the Caribbean, and the American art form of jazz. And this is what it formed into. So
it's
it
like
was
a
called,
fusion, huh?
yes. And back then in the 30s and 40s, it was called Afro-Cuban music. But once it hit the 50s, everybody wanted to mambo, Desi Arnaz. America was into mambo, and they had a huge spots in New York City called the Palladium, where everybody, African American, Jewish, Latins, they all danced together. Sammy Davis Jr. and Marlon Brando, they'd
Fantastic.
all sit in with the bands and that whole movement. And it led to salsa. They had so many names for it. It
Yeah.
created salsa. So as I learned the history of this music and how it originated, I created a show in San Diego called Latin Grooves on the award-winning KSDS Jazz 80.3 FM, which is a award. I say award-winning because it was always, we've won the awards every year as the top-rated jazz station of the year, which was the Marconi Award, with the Oscars of radio.
Oh, wow.
And it was going great for many years, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, yeah, but right before the pandemic, I had this idea of how can I give back to the community?
Well,
I always,
Chris, that's really the part that moved me when you were sharing that part of your story. And I appreciate you telling me how you got to where you are here today.
yeah,
I'll tell you what you're doing now to me is so powerful that I just can't wait for you to share the rest of where you're going now. So
yeah. So
let's
what
hear a
had
little bit
happened,
about that.
I always had an idea of music is all I know in my life, and my wife is an entrepreneur and she's in the corporate world and she knows how to start companies. So I told her my vision, and she says, well, I can make this happen. So, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to attack these, I'm from Logan Heights and my wife is from Paradise Hills in Southeast San Diego and all these areas. And we've come out of these areas and become successful. I said, I want to go back in these areas and mentor and teach kids music and gift them a music instrument
Wow.
and just see where it's going to go with this. And it was like, okay, so we started right before the pandemic hits, it slows us down. Okay. And then coming out of the pandemic, during the pandemic, I lost my job for 22 years on the radio, but I'm led to the house of music. So now it's about creating music, but it's a mentorship for kids to give them out of these issues, whether they're having at home, whether they're having, in school, whatever it is, because a lot of these kids that we work with are underserved, formerly homeless.
Sure.
We have a homeless school in Logan Heights called the Monarch School.
Hmm.
And a lot of these schools in these underserved areas, they don't have any music and arts programs. So I realized that too when my wife was saying they don't have anything like that. I said, no, they don't. So let's change that. So going into the Monarch School, going into National City, going into Logan Heights and teaching kids music, but also mentoring them and trying to get them out of their, you know, open up
Yeah.
creativity and just something that can give them some hope.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned to you that with my background, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, which I think most people understand what that means. It's like it's kind of a really rough area, really rough.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a lot of those things, but I did have a couple of relatives in my own life that kind of pointed me in the right direction and protected me from a lot of things, bad things that were going on around. And makes such a difference when someone looks back and says, let me just help you. Let me at least give you some direction. Now, one of the things I noticed, even in my own life and my own growing up, there were some of my friends that were just not interested in trying to do better. But there were those of us that were saying, we would like a better life. And I think that you may run into that as well with what you're doing. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh, that's very accurate because, I've had resistance from some of these kids because they don't want music but I've had some amazing, beautiful stories. And not every story is good. The one that comes to mind was this little African American girl. She comes into the program and loving it. She starts looking up African drumming. She is just on fire. And we're at this place in El Cajon called East County Transitional Living Center, where they're coming from homeless and then their parents are trying to get in the workforce and stuff like that. She's on fire. She plays in front of 3,000 people at our music festival at the Rady Shell that we had in 22. And she gets her instrument, and then we get a message from the center that she's gone. And they're taking her away to the Polinsky Center, which is where they for foster kids, because her mom relapsed on drugs. And me and my wife looked at each other and said, man, should we think about adopting this girl? Like, we actually asked our girls, would you mind having it? They were like, yes, do it. And we went to the Polinsky Center. She came running, ran up to us, gave us a big hug, and then she was gone. They just took her away, and it was like, man,
Wow.
I didn't see it as a loss. I just saw it as, this is the life we chose to be in, this type of, with kids. And then there's great stories where this kid who was so resistant last year to me, he's like, no, I ain't doing nothing. I said, well, then go sit in the corner. And then he saw us start playing with the kids and having fun, and we're drumming and doing all this stuff. And then he's like, Mr. Chris, can I sit in? I like, come on. And then by the end of his graduation, his mom's in tears, and she shows me a video. She goes, look at this. And he's with a piano teacher learning piano, and he's smiling and he's laughing. He was a hurt kid. His father wasn't around, and, he was resisting, but now he's at the performing arts school, and he's moving on to bigger and better things because that little start that he got,
Yeah. Well, great story, Chris. And, it's funny when you say that you were led to this, right? I know that from our earlier conversation, I know that you're a believer, and you know that these things are not coincidental in our lives, are they?
No, they're not. They're not at all.
Your mission and what you're doing, I'm sure of.
Yeah.
Because I love it. The reason I started this show at all is because I feel like we have something that we can share. Those of us that have been around a while, we have something that we can share with, younger generations. That's really why I started this whole podcast. So this is really inspiring, Chris. And I appreciate you sharing what you've shared. Now, you mentioned too that your wife is in business.
Yes.
What type of business does she do?
Well, my wife, it was funny, during the pandemic, she actually won San Diego Business Journal Businesswoman of the Year for a startup she had during the pandemic. Since then, she's gotten out of that, and she's creating a company. I don't know if it's a startup, but it's about water, and it's about creating water through atmosphere, humidity. Yeah. And you're going to start seeing that we are going through a water crisis in not only America, but other countries are going through it. Just where our neighbors, Mexico alone, are being rationed today as we speak in different neighborhoods in Tijuana. And, we're using up so much of the water because of whether it's data centers or, people building and stuff like that. The oil fields, water sources are being used up. So she found a technology and a system that can create up to 50,000 gallons of water per day through a machine, through the air of the humidity. And that's ready to take off. And she's working on it as we speak. She's not here right now, and she's traveling, and she's also, making this happen. So maybe you can get her on. She'll explain more to it. But this is, when I've seen a lot of the billionaires and people that are very successful in the business world, if you're not doing something that is impactful that can change the world, I believe this is one thing that can definitely change the world. And we'll talk more about that and another, getting her on here hopefully soon, because it's on the verge of explosion right now.
Well, that's fantastic. That's exciting too, by the way. And it's needed because there are so many areas of the world where there are shortages of water. And I don't know, I guess pipelines can move water around, but if you have another way to create the water from, I guess, the atmosphere, wow.
Yeah. And also in San Diego alone, just in the next year and a half, our water bills are going to go up 60%, just here alone. So it's already starting to happen. And then we're getting cut off from the Colorado River, and all the water they're giving from there to Arizona and California. Yeah. So a lot of stuff is happening already.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to then the House of Music. Where are you guys located, and how can people learn more about what it is that you guys are doing to help children?
So what we do is we take the program to you. We're based in National City, but we don't have a physical site where people come here because kids can't travel, coming from Chula Vista or Logan Heights. They can't. So what we do is the sites like we're about to start a program with the MAC project in Chula Vista. They have a high school. So what we do is we take our instructors, we take all our instruments, and we go to the site and we teach classes there, whether it's weekly, daily, whatever it is, whatever their need is. And then we go to different sites, different schools every day of the week, and to teach them this art form of Latin music. But we also teach not just the Cuban and the salsa, and we teach the cumbia, which is Mexican, the reggaeton, which the kids love, today, and the different styles of Latin music, the technique, how to hit the drums, learning the notes, and playing together as a team. But what we do is we play together in a group, but then when we stop, I stop. And I have the kids just play solos. Whatever comes to your heart and mind, play. And some of these solos are just, my kids just, what they're hearing are amazing. So it's beyond that. And then when they stay like a school year program or a 9-week program, whatever we have, they get a brand new instrument they can keep. And we have a ceremony at their school, at their center, whatever it is, like a graduation ceremony. They can play in front of their parents, and we teach them routines to play. So that's what happened. That's how we operate. We're go where we're needed.
And then how do you guys get the funding? And, because you said you let the kids keep the instruments, right? Which is phenomenal.
It's a challenge.
How can we help?
We need help with donors and grants, because grants are so competitive and so hard to get these days. And we're self-funded right now, and we were thriving for a minute really, really well, because we were taking our volunteers and we were working at Petco Park. We were working at the Snapdragon Stadium, and we would work the concession stands and get income that way per event. We'd get a percentage of the sales. But that was cut off because there was a fake nonprofit discovered in San Diego, and they kind of got rid of that program. So right now we're just going after grants. We're barely alive, but we're still alive, and we need grants, we need donors, and stuff like that, because instruments, like you said, are expensive. We have to pay our artists to teach, and just administrative costs. There's a lot. And just getting the word out there, and people to see, what we're doing, how we're inspiring kids, changing lives with every note. We kind of use that line, and which is very true. So I just getting the word out there to see to have people see what we're doing. And there's a lot of big donors. There's a lot of corporations that need tax write-offs that can donate to this program, and I have a partnership through the music industry, because I've been in the music industry so long, with the largest Latin percussion company in the world. They're called LP, Latin Percussion. They're based in Oxnard. So what they do is they give us the instruments at a really reduced cost to give to, because they know it's going to kids. And also what we do, we don't have the funding this year, but we're going to try to make one next year. Every year we do a music festival where we bring top groups, Grammy Award winning artists from Cuba and Puerto Rico. And we have a music festival to raise money to buy instruments for kids, and then have the kids perform during the festival in front of, hundreds and hundreds of people. In some cases, thousands of people. When we were thriving in 2022, coming out of the pandemic, we rented the Rady Shell here in San Diego, which is a humongous venue where the symphony plays, and we had 3,000 people, and we brought the two biggest groups from Cuba. Los Van Van, who's a Grammy Award-winning artist. They travel the world, and my relationships with them, and they came and they played in front of, like I said, 3,000 people, and we got to inspire a lot of kids. And that's what we also do, with the music festival every year. So we're trying to plan something for 26 next summer, something really big. So I would say, donors and grants and just trying to get the word out there where we can get some money, because 100% of our money goes into the program with buying instruments.
I love it. And do you guys have a website or a way to be reached?
Yes. You go to thehouseofmusic.org, and you can see what it has a donate button, and you could see a video on there that Fox 5 did an amazing story with us last year. About the House of Music, and we were at a site called East County Transitional Living Center, and that girl that's the main girl in the story, she's going on to play music today, and her family is formerly homeless, and now they both have jobs, so it's kind of a cool story.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, they can look at thehouseofmusic.org.
Yeah, thehouseofmusic.org, and you guys can go out to check that out and donate. Don't just go and look, donate. Because giving back is really what we should be doing. And let me just say this too, Chris. For most of my life, I spent a lot of time working to just try to take care of myself, of course, like most people. But I didn't understand the importance of giving back until it just, I don't know. I guess maybe I could say God put it on my heart to say, look, there's more to this than you just doing well for yourself. You've got to do something for others. And so right before the pandemic, kind of like you, I started really saying, okay, why am I here? And I know I'm not just here to go to work every day and come home and then repeat. You know what I mean? There's more to it than that. And I'm sure that some of you guys listening right now feel the very same way. And this is just one way that, helping Chris is one way that we can actually accomplish that. And I've learned now that just giving back and helping others just does something it does more for me, I believe.
Yeah. It does. It makes you feel good and kind of doing God's work, but it's not for me either. It's for the children. It's not, you know what I mean? And also, when I tell companies and people, this is a tax write-off. We are a nonprofit. We have our EIN number on our website too, where you can pull that, your donation, whatever it is, it will go towards your taxes for a tax write-off, for yourself too.
Yeah, and we can use those. Those of us that are high earners, we're always looking for some way to write off some taxes, because we're going to pay that money to somebody. Why give it to the government when we can actually give it to some kids?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really comes down to that. So I love that aspect of it too, Chris. So Chris, as we wind this down, is there any messaging or anything that you'd like to say right now as kind of like the final words here? I'll let you have that, and then that you might want to share.
Well, first of all, I love the hat, the fedora. Your hat is it's classic, and it looks good on you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, like you kind of said it for me about giving. When you're giving to the community, we attend our church is the Rock Church, and Pastor Miles McPherson, a dear friend of my wife, she grew up with him in his house in 1985 before he was even a pastor.
Oh my God!
So the Rock is God first, community, and make a difference. If you could just follow those golden rules, it will change your life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it really, really will. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I'm familiar with Miles McPherson and The Rock. Yeah, but I attended there for a while, but then I moved up to Temecula, which is a little bit too far to drive down.
Yeah, that was San Marcos campus.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. That's true. They do right now, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Chris. This has been a fantastic interview. I told you guys at the beginning, you're going to love this guy's story, right? And he's got a great story, as you have now experienced for yourselves. And I hope that you guys will head on over to the houseofmusic.org and just learn more about what it is that they do. And if God puts it on your heart, then help, right? Help at whatever level you can. Everything helps, right? Not everybody's able to give $1,000. We get that,
Yeah.
right? But help at whatever you can.
Yeah.
And God will see it and the kids will appreciate it, guys. So I will be there to help out. That's for sure, Chris. You can count on that. Yeah.
Changing lives with every note. That's our line.
Changing lives with every note. I like it. I can't say anything any better than that. So thank you so much again, Chris, for being my guest here today. I want to thank you guys for joining us today. And I hope that this episode of the Freedom and Prosperity Podcast has moved you the way that it has moved me. And until I see you guys next time, God bless you and God bless your family and God bless America.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Let me stop. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do from this point forward is I'm going to have Chris actually share some stories that we did not get to during the interview, but I think are relevant and important. And Chris, so if you don't mind.
Yes. And digging deeper into this music and where it came from, I mentioned Africa and Cuba and America. I took a trip, was fortunate in 2016 to go to Cuba, right when it opened up for Americans. President Obama at the time had just opened up the travel to Cuba, and he was there that week. I get there the Friday, a day after he leaves. As soon as I get there, the Rolling Stones are in Cuba, so we get to see them. And what I had done, knowing that I was going to host a trip through our radio station, about 50 people from all over the country who are members of our radio station met me in Miami. We flew to Cuba, and we had 9 days in Cuba. And at night, I would go film. So I had some friends in LA who were documentary guys, and I said, meet me there, and we're going to go film a little mini documentary about Cuba and the history of it, and musically and politically and whatever it is. So it was my first time going. And I get there and the Rolling Stones Friday night, okay? And then I have to host the trip with our members of the radio, and we travel during the day. Then at night I take the film crew and we start filming and interviewing people. I learned that doctors make $75 a month as a surgeon, okay? These people are so educated over there, so educated, but they just don't get paid. So it's by law, you have to go to school and you pick a school that you want to be in. Like if I'm 5 years old, I want to be an athlete. Okay, I go to a sports academy. I want to be a musician. I go to a music school. So we went to music schools through to learn more about the house of music. This is before I even started. And, these kids go to music class from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week. And all they do is learn music. Learn how to write. They learn classical music first, and then they learn how to write, arrange, and by the time they're 14, they're professional.
Wow.
So that's where I saw that. So then that was a great trip, and then I ended up hooking up locally with KUSI Television here in San Diego, and they said, well, you have a documentary here. So they edited it, and I went on this Dave's World of Wonder, Dave Scott, and they showed segments of it. It was about 18 minutes long of interviews and showing Cuba opening up to America in 2016. I go the next year, Carnival Cruise finds out, and they say, well, you host a trip for us. I go there in 17, and then I take the House of Music, my wife, who's the board chair, and some friends to show them Cuba and the roots of this music. But it's really tough because the tourists are treated great, but the people that live there aren't.
Yeah.
truly the best. And
Yeah.
she got to see, how the music from kids to get them to professionals, how they are, and how music and dance is a major um, part of their culture, and they're just amazing musicians. They're just amazing dance.
Hmm.
They can
Hmm.
dance, and
Hmm.
it's part of the culture. So you can see that on YouTube. Me in Cuba. It's about 18 minutes long. Chris Springer with KUSI, and I was standing at the beach with a microphone, and I'm doing live shots from Havana, Cuba, and it was quite an experience. It was very emotional, I would say, because I'm living and eating well, and these people that I'm talking with, and they're struggling to get food.
Yeah.
So I made some friends, and even the waiter, when it was my day to leave, he'd serve me every day in the hotel, and we kind of cried a little bit and hugged each other, and I said thank you. I gave him a little bit of money and just said thank you for being there. Just it was just very emotional. And it's a roller coaster ride of emotions
Yeah.
that you go through, seeing the way they live, but they don't know that
Right.
because they're happy
They
people,
don't know
but
how bad they have it, right?
they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. So that
Yeah.
was a quite an experience to go through. And my wife said it was the best trip of her life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's quite a statement.
It was because, she saw so much, and then I'm bringing her around the top artists in the world from Cuba because I have relationships with them, and we got invited one day to the music studio because there was a 5-day music festival over there, and they said, "Come here, Chris, come on over. I want you to see my band rehearse and play." And she got to see it live,
Yeah.
18-piece orchestra playing,
Yeah.
rehearsing, and it's kind of, she's never seen any of that because the music part of it is new to her, and
Yeah.
because we've only we met in 2018, so
Oh, okay.
she doesn't know the so much of the history of the music of this stuff, so she got to
Mhm.
experience that, and it was just mind-blowing for her, and going to the beaches, and
Yeah.
just to seeing the
Yeah. I didn't
struggle,
realize,
and
I don't know
yeah,
how I didn't know this, but I didn't realize that Cuba had been opened up for Americans again. It just was never on my radar,
yeah,
And I've been down through the Caribbean several times. I think we're scheduled to go down through the Caribbean again next year, you
yeah.
know. But Cuba's not on any of the stops. Are they
Well, here's the thing,
closed
another
up?
thing you must learn historical, that Cuba was traded for Florida.
Traded?
Look,
Oh, I see.
yeah, back a long, 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 long time ago. It was
Okay.
traded for Florida. It was part of this region because it's only 90 miles
Right.
away from, Miami. And going through Cuba also, you got to see when Castro took over in 59, it hasn't been touched since 59. So was stayed in an area called Miramar, which I call it the La Jolla of Cuba. But these are mansions, but they're empty. They're
Wow.
fenced up with
Wow.
all the windows broken, and you could tell that the mob had stayed here, heads of
Yeah.
states, and
Yeah.
a lot of people that were wealthy because Cuba was thriving before Castro came in,
Right.
and it was just an amazing place to be. And you see these mansions worn down since the 50s, and just nothing's been touched, and with the cars and the
Yeah. It's sad.
yeah.
It's sad.
But as a tourist, you live like you got it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned also, Chris, that you may know some other people that I could interview. So,
Yeah,
I'm totally open to that. If you've got people that you think I should speak with, I would appreciate any
yeah.
referrals. And I think that well, I have your name and your email and your phone number. So I'm going to add you into my phone. Okay. And I don't know what you have of me. I don't know if you have my email address. Um,
I do. I have the emails that were sent to me, and I have your phone number.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
951 area code.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned that
Okay.
earlier. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I moved up to Temecula for a while, but now I live in Poway. So I'm back
Okay.
down here.
Oh, wow. We lived right near Poway in Rancho Bernardo. We're back in Nashville City, living in the house my wife grew up in, and we're
Uh,
fixing it up.
okay.
Our kids still go to Rancho Bernardo High School and Rancho Bernardo
That's funny.
Elementary.
That's where my son went. He went to Rancho Bernardo High School, my youngest son, because we lived pretty much most of our life in Rancho Bernardo when we were in San Diego. We were in
Yeah,
Rancho Bernardo, but about 4 years ago we moved to Poway. Other
yeah.
than
That kind of was the when our kid our daughter who's a senior now, she was there and she's playing violin in the symphony. She plays 5 instruments and she's playing
wow,
at their music program. And my wife says, do they have this every, I said, they don't, once you get south of the 805 in Mission Valley, there's nothing like this. And our daughter, she plays with the House of Music now, teaches piano and stuff like that with us once in a while, but she plays 5 instruments and they have an amazing music programs up there. We lived off Carmel Mountain,
yeah, yeah.
right behind the Ralphs there and the houses there.
I was there when they built the Ralphs. I used to live at the apartments right across the street from there. When I first moved to San Diego in 1989, I lived in there's some apartments right across the street from Ralph's,
Yep.
and that was about the only thing there at the
And
time.
we lived behind the apartments on that road with the houses on this
Yeah,
one road.
I remember when they built all those houses. When I
Yeah.
first moved out there, none of that stuff was there, right? And yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So funny. Small world, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's where and I met my wife in 18 and we moved up there. I moved up there with them. And but now we're back in Nashville City, the house she grew up in the 70s. We're remodeling and fixing it
Yeah.
up and but we're going to eventually go back up there because our kids still go to school up there. We drive
Sure.
them every day.
Whoa, now that's a commitment. That's a real commitment.
Yeah. And I serve at the Rock Church on Sunday. I do the traffic ministry. So I go to service at 8 and then serve in the traffic till because there's like thousands of people
Yeah.
that go there. So I do that
Yeah.
on Sundays too.
Well, this is fantastic. I appreciate your time today for this interview, and I will head on over to your website. But I also want to talk with you again. I'll reach out to you sometime during the week. I'll send you some sort of an invitation to maybe we can speak because I raise money, right? That's what I do, and then we invest. I represent investors, and we invest in primarily real estate related stuff because that's my
Well,
background.
you got to talk to my wife because that's what she does.
What's that?
What you just said.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Well, then I definitely need to speak with her because that's what I do, right? I raise money. I manage two funds. I manage a $20 million fund and a $250 million fund. And I use the funds primarily just for investing. But, I think I've been trying to figure out what is something that we could do to give back because a lot of the people that invest with us, they ask, do you guys have any charitable causes? So I started a I don't know the numbers, but a nonprofit, but I know they have numbers but I started a nonprofit about 3 years ago, but I haven't done anything with it. I haven't raised any money with it or anything like that. And I just feel my wife asked me 2 or 3 days ago, so what's happening with our nonprofit? And I said, pretty much nothing. But there may be an opportunity for us to just work with you. You know what I
That
mean?
would be wonderful because we need it really bad right now. We're kind of in limbo right now, and it's
Yeah.
tough because of what had happened. But it was a mistake on our part too, because when we were thriving, we should have kept writing grants and going after money because we were comfortable. And then we didn't know that was going to happen. But you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I
but
do.
my wife, I think you really should talk to her, even if it's not on the podcast, because that's what she works with real estate and investors
Okay.
to invest in a lot of projects. I'll
Yeah.
let you talk more about it with her.
Okay.
But we definitely, if you know companies like that that want to donate, because there's a lot of companies that have a lot of money and donate a lot of money.
Yeah,
That
there
would
are.
really help us out a lot, and I can really take this program to another level. I have a goal of 250 kids this year that I want to bless. And that's you figure 250. It's per instrument and the music class.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, perhaps our company can be one of the sponsors for you guys, is what I'm thinking. And as I'm raising capital, I can literally just somehow I'll work you guys into my presentation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you join with us, it's not just about making money. We're giving back too. We're working with the House of Music. And by the way, I didn't ask you this during the interview, but are you able to do anything outside of the San Diego area?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we've been asked actually to bring this program to LA. There's actually talks about New York, the Bronx, where this culture of music is where it was born, in the Bronx. Large Puerto Rican culture over there. And I have one of our board members is on the radio over there in New York, Jose Calderon. I have we go to New York a lot, and they're like, man, we love this program over there. We got to get San Diego secured, and we need funding. It takes funding, but very connected with the music in this world, the artists, to, different regions. Miami, I have a dear friend over there. He's tied to all the Cuban artists. And we can take this set of standards.
Good. I'm thinking, that maybe it's a part of that's how we can help, because we're nationwide, right? We invest in projects nationwide. Right now, we've got some pretty big projects going in Florida, not in Miami. As a matter of fact, I'll be in Florida next week, just kind of visiting one of our sites to see what's going on there and just to look at the progress. But many of our investors, our investors are all over the city, all over the country. That's why I asked, can you go elsewhere? Because who knows, maybe they may want to see something similar developed in their own state or city.
No, there's no doubt, because where my wife is starting her company is going to be in Texas. So in San Antonio, San Angelo, and Houston. So we're going to be commuting there. And we thought about that too. There's a large Latino market in San Antonio where she's half Mexican and half Filipino. Mm-hmm. And connect with her on LinkedIn. Her name is Catherine Rels. She hasn't changed to Springer yet, because we joke about that, because everyone in the corporate world knows her as Catherine Rels.
Okay.
And
with a C or a K?
A C.
And how does she spell Rels?
Rells.
Okay. So this is your wife. Okay. Yeah, I will connect with her. And then I'm going to send you an invitation. Maybe we can talk again. I don't know exactly how we're going to be able to work together, but I think after a few conversations, it'll become apparent how we can do things together. You know what I mean? For us, how we can help you guys. Okay. So I'll reach out to you. I was just looking at my calendar for next week to see what I got available, but then I realized next week, actually, I'm traveling. I'm speaking in Florida next week, and then visiting our sites there. So I won't be around next week, but the following week might be a good week for us to just touch base again. Okay. All right. Well, Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Freedom and Prosperity Podcast with Desi Arnaz. Want to share your success story with our audience? Head over to freedomandprosperitypodcast.com/guest and apply to be our next guest.